Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sally Ann Pisk, will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sally Ann with you again this week, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Jane Freeman for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Welcome, Jane.
Hi, Sally. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today because in my work, obviously working with women, I do have clients from time to time that do get diagnosed with breast cancer. And like all conditions and diseases, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I know you're going to help us bust through some of that today. But before we get underway, I just want to share your bio. Jane Freeman is an internationally regarded and credentialed cancer dietitian and nutritionist. She's board certified in lifestyle medicine, a Leith's trained cook, an International Olympic Committee qualified sports dietitian, and British Medical Association award-winning cancer book author. She currently works out of the Mater Hospital's Wellbeing Centre for Cancer Patients, Valiant Health, and Alaya Lifestyle Medicine Centre at the Sydney Adventist Hospital in North Sydney. Jane has gained over 25 years' experience working out of leading hospitals and cancer clinics in Australia, London, and Singapore. She has also consulted to the World Cancer Research Fund, United Kingdom, Singapore Cancer Society, and the Australian Cancer Council. She wrote the first World Cancer Research Fund booklet on nutrition and activity after cancer treatment and has contributed to numerous other cancer patient resources. Jane is also a committee member of the Dietitians Association Oncology Special Interest Group. And I think, Jane, that bio just demonstrates your commitment to working with people with cancer. But let's get started by understanding why you chose to go into a career in nutrition and dietetics and then specialise in cancer.
Sally, I guess I originally became a dietitian. I was always really interested in food and science. I used to love, my mother was a great cook, and I would spend my weekends just cooking, and she also really inspired me. She was always making amazing meals for us at home. And sadly, she got cancer when I was at uni. So that sort of is probably where I, first became interested in the opportunity and how good food and nutrition could really help people with cancer. My mum really advocated for good food, and it was just something I was able to sort of help with her treatments and sort of witnessing all her side effects and whatnot. And yeah, so that's kind of how I first became. It's not about cancer diet's not about curing cancer, but it's just helping. I was able to help my mum feel stronger, recover between treatments, and again, it just gave her, someone who was a really inspirational foodie, a sense of control as well at a difficult time. Yeah.
Yes.
And since then, it's changed a lot.
Thanks for sharing.
But, fortunately cancer's a different illness now to what it was back then. I sadly did lose my mother, but since then, we've just, thanks to the dedicated researchers, we've now got so many amazing groundbreaking treatments that allow people with cancer to either get into remission or be cured or live well with cancer. In many cases, cancer can be now seen as a chronic illness, similar to sort of how we treat diabetes and heart disease. So that's been so great to sort of witness throughout my time working as a dietitian.
Yes, thanks for sharing that, because too often, even now, you'll hear friends or even my clients talk about someone close to them being diagnosed with cancer. And of course, every cancer is different and every person is different. But to know that it's not really like it used to be, like the death sentence, wasn't it? Like if you got cancer, it was kind of, a lot of people felt that that was the inevitable path because of the disease. So that is really hopeful in terms of moving forward and supporting people. And I know we're going to touch into that today in terms of how you support your clients from a nutritional point of view. But overall well-being point of view. When it comes to breast cancer, what are the risk factors and how common is breast cancer for women?
Sadly, it's too common. It's about 1 in 7 women will likely be diagnosed with breast cancer before the age of 85. And
Yeah.
in real number terms, in 2024, there was sort of close to 21,000 Australian women who were diagnosed with a breast cancer. And so it's the most common cancer in women in Australia. Key risk factors: age, high risk as we get older, can be family history, genetics. But in fact, genetics, we often do blame our genes, and of course it is a key link for certain types of cancer, certainly the BRCA gene related cancers, but in fact it's actually only about 5 to 10% of breast cancers are associated with genes. And I guess the modifiable risk factors we know of are being overweight or obese, particularly in the postmenopause breast cancers, not so much the pre-menopause cancers. Alcohol is a risk factor, inactivity another risk factor, and just the quality of your diet can be a risk factor. Just sort of know eating more of a plant-based, plant-rich diet certainly can help reduce overall risks for breast and of course other types of cancer as well. But yeah, I think that's important, that even if you are someone who has got a loaded gun with those key genes, even it's still kind of, living a healthy life and eating well can certainly also reduce your risk, not only for breast cancer, but all any cancers as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, it is. And I was just listening into you in terms about the genetic risk factor, because it wasn't until became eligible for a free breast screen that you sort of have a lot of your own misconceptions blown out of the water, because I thought, true, that most breast cancers were genetically related, but of course that is often in younger women, not so much women in the age group over 50. So yeah, I think it is really
Yeah.
important to recognize that, and also to look at what we can modify. So in terms of your role with working with women with breast cancer, do you come across myths and sort of confusion around nutrition and what's the best thing to be doing with food?
Oh, absolutely, Sally. I sometimes wish it was back in the day before the internet was available and we didn't have to sort of, help troubleshoot the many misconceptions. There are many. I guess probably the most common one, and I always say I wish I had $1 for this one, is that sugar feeds cancer. And so what I'll often sort of see is people who are just sort of dealing with a difficult diagnosis of breast cancer, and of course all the stress and anxiety that goes with that cancer. Quite often then they will sort of go down the track where they really restrict their diet and cut out a lot of things and maybe try and clean eat or whatever. And in fact, it just appears from where I sit that they're adding more burden and stress into already a stressful time at home. And so I guess, of course, it's a good opportunity to evaluate your lifestyle and see if there are things you can improve on. But I guess especially at the stressful time when you're facing often very intense treatments, which might include surgery or chemotherapy or radiotherapy, which also put a lot of course, extra stress on the body. Yeah, the last thing you want to be doing is really overly restricting your diet. So it's helpful to understand, I guess, that when it comes back to the sugar feeds cancer myth, that of course cancer is it's a metabolic illness. It's also very metabolically agile. We already know that all of our cells in our body use glucose or sugar in the blood. And I always explain to people they will have had a blood glucose test at some time just to check what their normal glucose is. So just sort of helping them understand we can't really control where our body sends the glucose in our blood because it's feeding all our cells. And cancer being very metabolic illness, it's a very aggressive issue. It will get glucose from the body no matter what. And if you really restrict your body, you break down your muscle, which is something we don't really want to have happen when you're having cancer treatment, especially in the postmenopausal space. So I guess it's really important to sort of understand you can't stop your cancer cell from getting a fuel source. So really, really overly restricting your diet's not going to sort of help you. And in fact, it'll just leave you a bit depleted and a bit on the back foot, which again is the last thing you need during that treatment time. And instead, it's about focusing on the quality of carbohydrates and the quality of other foods that you're needing to nourish your body at that time from you go Goes back to eating more of the good quality carbs, vegetables, a bit of fruit, and of course the really whole grain, higher fibre, lower GI types of carbohydrates that you do need for energy at that time.
Yes, but no, thanks for sort of raising that sugar myth because I have to say it's the first thing that comes into my mind because we see it so much over social media
Mm,
about don't eat sugar because it causes cancer and all sorts of sort of extrapolations from that claim. But it also reminds me some of the guilt that my clients have expressed and that self-blame for
mm.
getting breast cancer because they know they've been carrying excess weight. And do you find that as well, that when you meet women who are diagnosed who have perhaps tried to lose weight but haven't been able to, and there's some concern around
Mm.
that?
Yeah, absolutely, Sally. And I think what's important is, when we look at the research and evidence, it's big picture stuff. It doesn't actually sort of relate to individuals. Every individual has their own sort of issues and challenges and different individual needs. So I think it's really important when we look at the research, it's really important not to extrapolate and say that it definitely applies to me and that is a cause. I think the other sort of the really important thing is, yeah, we know that it's also just a risk factor. It's not a cause of cancer. And I think it's really important to sort of understand that. And there are many risk factors. And also it's also about the type of body weight you're carrying. I mean, of course, this is why we do encourage people to try and be active, eat a healthy diet, so that you are maintaining or maybe trying to build your lean muscle mass, which of course actually weighs more than body fat. So I think it's really important to sort of, yeah, of course, understand that when people are diagnosed, it is a natural thing to want to do is blame what I've done or what could I've done differently to cause cancer. But it's such a complex illness, so multifaceted. It's not something you can sort of ever pinpoint. I did this on this particular day, and that's kind of what has caused my cancer. But it's about looking forward and sort of, within the realm of what you're dealing with at a particular time, maybe there's some small things that you can work on, or again, try and certainly be more active. And I think that's really important for people to just sort of look forward in a positive way, and how can they sort of, yeah, make some good changes that are not only going to help their long-term risk, but also how they feel, their quality of life. We also know diet makes such a big difference to even levels of fatigue, which is a really difficult side effect of cancer and cancer treatment. Cognition, we hear many people talk about chemo brain. So it's not, yeah, it's sort of looking at more positive ways that you can sort of use diet to sort of help you cope and be at your best across a difficult
Yeah.
time of treatments and
Yeah.
appointments.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
thanks, Jane, because it is, as you said, a very stressful and busy time, and there's just so much for women and their families to learn in terms of the path
Mm.
forward, and obviously there would be decisions that need to be made in terms of treatment options as well. But I really agree with what you said about weight, and I sometimes wish we could just remove body weight out of our vocabulary because weight
Yeah.
doesn't really mean anything. It, like you said, depends how much muscle we've got on board.
Mm.
And we know,
Yeah.
especially in postmenopausal women, it's important that we keep on board as much
Yeah.
lean muscle mass as possible. Yeah, so thanks for
Absolutely.
sharing that.
I saw a lovely lady this morning who's feeling a bit despondent. She's really been trying hard. She's managed, when she stepped on the scale, she saw she's managed to take 3 kilos off, which is great. It's a lot, but she's feeling a bit despondent about that. But we put her on our expensive body composition machine. And in fact, she's lost 3 kilos in body fat. She's lost a couple of kilos in visceral mass, but she's actually put on a couple of kilos of muscle mass. So it was the most awesome results when I was showing to her and explaining it to her. And I always get people to visualize, like sometimes one or two, we're sometimes used to seeing these extreme shows where, extreme weight loss, but imagining what 2 or 3 kilos looks like and you carry those bag of potatoes and take that off the body, it's a lot. And more importantly, she's eating well, she's exercising, she's going to her boot camp in the morning now, she's buying more fruits and vegetables, trying a few meatless meals. So focusing on what you can do and enjoying that process versus, what that number on the scale might say really, oh, I've got to emphasize that the scale number really doesn't mean a lot, and never should you sort of use it as a measure of self-worth or, yeah,
No. And
your
in
effort in life to live well.
no, and of course with that example that you just shared, that 3 kilo
Mm,
shift didn't really explain what had happened. It didn't really give you
exactly.
the whole picture. And
Yeah.
I've always had this theory myself that it's not so much about body weight before we understood more about body
Mm,
composition. It's about the foods that we eat and how nourishing they are. And I think
absolutely.
the research into the gut microbiome has obviously helped explain a lot of things that we have known for over
Absolutely.
30 years of being dietitians. So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
we've got a
definitely.
better
It gives
understanding of,
us.
yeah, why plant-based is so important.
Exactly. We've been saying eat more fruit and vegetables forever and a day, but now that and we see the benefits in the research and outcomes, but now we're understanding it's the gut microbiome who might be behind the benefits of eating, fruit, veggies, legumes,
Yeah,
grains, etc. So it is really interesting.
it
And
is.
again, in another area I work in, it's a little bit off the track, but many women do end up having immunotherapy treatments for their breast cancers. And I also sort of have done some work at the Melanoma Institute, and they've just did a study a couple of years ago looking at the patients having immunotherapy, having a really high fibre, plant-rich diet versus those who were using just given a probiotic. And they had to stop the trial because the ones on just having a probiotic, were actually not responding as well as the patients having a high fibre, plant-rich diet. And it seems that the key thing of the gut microbiome is diversity, and we just know that the plant-rich diet does really feed our bugs and does increase the diversity. So that maybe you're diluting one of them, maybe the helpful pathogens that might be in your gut microbiome. So that's why we're not sure, yet in this space whether probiotics help, because they might just sort of feed one particular strain or a couple of strains of or support strains of bacteria, but it seems to be diversity that's key. So it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. You don't really quite understand it all, but
No,
it's certainly
no, and
interesting space.
that's certainly my understanding in terms of the use of probiotics. I think other than for use maybe in travelers' diarrhea, they tend to be
Yeah,
less helpful than people would like to think, and
yeah.
that plant-based fibers and diversity are really important in terms of optimal health
Mm,
and well-being.
definitely.
When it comes to a woman being diagnosed with breast cancer and coming to see you, Jane, what sort of challenges may you face during treatment? And of course, that would depend on the type of treatment that she was going to receive.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. So yes, it's very individual, and I think that's really important too. Is that speaking to sort of cancer dietitian like myself, you can
Yes.
sit down and just really understand where they're at. How have they sort of arrived at the treatment? Are they nutritionally well? Otherwise, have they lost a lot of weight? Maybe just with anxiety or stress leading up to it. So you sort of understand what their nutrition state is, and then yes, what sort of treatments. There's a particular cancer treatment that many of your listeners may know if they've had treatment called AC. We call it the red devil because it's well known to, in many women, kind of contribute to some difficult side effects, nausea, bowel function changes. Sometimes they get sort of sore mouth ulcers, and taste changes, get that sort of horrible metallic-y taste when they eat food. So if they're really struggling with a lot of those side effects, it'll be really about sort of really making sure that they can find a way to nourish their body in a good way. We really don't want women losing a lot of weight or certainly muscle mass during treatment, as we sort of just touched on. It's not helpful to them longer term. So it'll be very much looking at what they're managing. I really emphasize hydration, having enough protein, and with protein, we sort of feel like people do better if they dose it. So having a couple of high protein foods at each meal, which can be some dairy foods or some plant-based proteins or lean chicken, fish, etc. You do want them to sort of also just have enough energy. So, might be just getting some toast or with a soup or some whatever cereal in the morning or a bit of rice or whatever. We want some good kind of carbohydrates. And because of the some of the drugs that sort of sometimes cause either quite often constipation. We do want to try and make sure those carbs are giving them a bit more fibre. But fatigue's hard, so it has to be about convenience as well. It has to be simple. So you're always just sort of saying, just grab a protein, maybe some tinned fish or some frozen fish fillets, or maybe some falafels or something. Some salad, get salad bags if that's the easiest way for you to get some coleslaw on your plate. You've got to sort of have your pantry stocked, because there will be some times where it is going to feel like a lot of effort to put food on the plate. So definitely having some easy grabs or some frozen meals will help those times when it feels difficult. But it's really important to nourish and sort of help your body to be able to cope with the treatments, respond well, and you're really trying to recover as quickly as you can so you can get those blood counts back up for the next treatment. It's like hurdles. You want to keep getting over them and get to that finish line as quick as you can. Yeah.
Because how long can treatment last for some women with breast cancer?
Yeah, again, totally depends on the type and the stage they have, but someone with a little more of an advanced stage, chemo can be good 3 to 6 months, depends how they dose it, even longer in some cases. Then they often have surgery after the chemo. So chemo is sort of given to sort of shrink and reduce the cancer before they do the surgery, and then they'll come back sometimes and then do a dose of radiotherapy after that. And then they'll perhaps, if it's a hormone positive cancer, then they'll sort of start on hormone blocker treatments, which they're often on for sort of many years to come, can be 5 years and 10 years in some cases. So that's a typical type of treatment sort of cycle. But again, many variations to that, Sally. Some women will need more treatment. They might need immunotherapy, other treatments as well, again, depending on their stage and how they respond to the treatments. Earlier stage breast cancers may not need chemotherapy or radiotherapy, and yeah, but often if it's a hormone one, we'll have the hormone blockers, which themselves have also some challenges as well for women. Many women do struggle with weight gain when they're on hormone blocker treatments, because they can metabolically slow you down. And of course, blocking estrogen is an important hormone that does help us out in many ways. So it is something we know when it's blocked can affect how they do, with all of those health challenges.
Yes, and I think it just sort of re-emphasizes the importance to reach out for nutrition support, and especially reach out to someone who has specialized in cancer and understands the treatments that you're going through and has worked with other women. And even though we're all different, there's certain, like the side effects you were mentioning, you'd be very aware of that and being able to help your clients sort of navigate that bumpy path for the time being. And I have heard of the weight gain during treatment, and that just sort of freaks people out again, because we've been trained to worry about the number on the scale. So if weight gain was to occur during treatment, Jane, how do you reassure your clients that they can still be healthy while this is happening?
Yeah. And again, there's sometimes reasons for weight gain that are a little bit out of the control, like
Yes.
if they're on steroid treatment, Sally, which really, myself recently having had some steroids, it really does drive that appetite. It's really hard to sort of curb it. I think it's just reassuring women. Having said that too, some doctors still do say eat whatever you like and don't worry about it. I probably would bring my, advice a little bit into just try and use food in a good way to anchor your day. I actually sort of really encourage people to be taking a much more positive approach. We actually want you to fill up on more foods that are going to kind of keep you feeling satisfied and fuller for longer. So that's where sort of good whole food, plant rich kind of approach to your diet really helps. So anchoring with meals. Sometimes people think they miss meals, or may skip breakfast or whatever. I've always done that. But I think it's really important through that time to sort of try and have 3 healthy, wholesome meals. I always use the plate model, where we really encourage them to sort of fill half the plate with, again, lots of vegetables. So I'll often give the example of my son who likes butter chicken that you can buy from Costco, and if I bring it home, I'll add kind of chickpeas and cauliflower, and if I really want to torture him, I'll add kale and serve with brown rice. But that's kind of that's the frame. You're sort of really choosing nutrition in a positive way. We actually want you to add more plant rich ingredients to every sort of meal opportunity you can, because that will really fill you up. It gives you helps all those plant foods are really high in these really key nutrients called phytonutrients, which you really know also can help with just sort of reducing inflammation, certainly with your gut microbiome. But we have to get them from lots of different colors of fruits and vegetables, and there's lots of different key ones. So that's what I'm really sort of telling people with weight gain, sort of really focus on foods that are going to nourish your body, fill you up with the good things. We know fiber increases that hormone GLP-1, which is the same hormone that the various loss of medications use. So it does fill you up. Yeah, the more you chew, the more you slow down, just use food and meals to sort of anchor your day and focus on what you can manage to do in a good way is
Yes.
really sort of the way to go.
And I think the practice of mindful eating is sort of an added benefit there, really stopping to eat, because so many people eat on the run, literally. And I often use the
Absolutely.
analogy that we don't fill up our car with fuel or electricity while it's moving forward. We actually have to stop the car to fill it up.
Like
And
that.
and we,
Yeah,
we need to do that for ourselves. And as you were
exactly.
mentioning
Yeah.
earlier, in terms of the higher stress levels, well, we want to encourage women to reduce those stress levels as much as possible through mindfulness, relaxation, and getting support to navigate
Mm,
the changes that they're going through at that time. So
absolutely.
definitely a big one for
Yeah.
mindful eating, and yeah, just being able to sit and allow the body to process the food is so important.
Yeah. It's a really difficult time. And so just using food to sit down and think in a positive way, what can I do? A small change I can add. Might be just adding a few more veggies into a salad, into your sandwich, or spinach. I use the bags of spinach leaves, but just stopping and just tuning into what you need and just sort of, yeah, catching your breath at a difficult time. This is where food and mindful eating is a really powerful
Yeah.
tool for women who are going through treatment. And it's a thing they can control as well. It's a time when everything else might feel a bit out of control, or obviously it's a difficult treatments that their doctors are sort of prescribing. But food side is something that then they can really sort of put their energy into and use in a good way. And I think that's really powerful
Yeah.
tool for women who are
Yeah.
going through breast cancer treatment.
Yeah, but I think also just looking at the whole vegetable story, I think it's still only about 1 in 10 Australian adults eat enough vegetables. So it's something that I'm always talking to my clients about, and even though I focus more
Mm,
on eating behavior change and mindful eating, we need to look at adequate fiber and protein and hydration to make sure we are
mm,
actually physically hungry or physically satiated or full. We need to have food to
mm,
help us to do that and sort of change those around. And vegetables is the one that, yeah, that comes up time and time again.
mm,
And people can
yes.
think that they're eating enough vegetables, but when you start saying, oh, well, is it about 2.5 cups of cooked vegetables, or is it 2 cups of salad? Exactly how much are you having? And
Mm,
I know myself in the past when I've done like 5 a day vegetable challenges that you need to eat vegetables at least 2 meals a day to have any hope of getting to those five serves. And
absolutely.
I'm a vegetarian based
Exactly.
eater. Like, so vegetables are a big
Yeah.
part of my day, and lentils and
Yeah.
legumes. But unless you do it twice a day, and obviously 3 times a day could be better. But
Mm.
I have to admit, Jade, I do like my oats for breakfast, so I can't see myself adding any other some nuts
Okay,
and
same. I'm
seeds.
an oat person for breakfast as well. I'm a very still cut oats every morning is kind of what I have. Absolutely. And it is something you have to be proactive with. It's not easy to get 5 cups of veggies and whatnot in a day. So certainly in winter soups are great, aren't they,
Yes.
Sally? Like lentil soups and things. I really advocate that. Good old baked beans in a toasty when you're really stuck with not be able to think of anything to cook. I just rediscovered that in COVID when I got really sick of kind of working out what to feed the family. Sorry, that you just throw a dark leafy green salad into, a lunch meal if it is a sort of a sandwich. Have your snacks in the afternoon, baby tomatoes, carrots. But you have to be, and then as I was sort of giving the example, you start with your base meal and then see if you can
Mm,
just keep loading up with more
mm,
veggies in there. And
yeah.
again, just going back to sort of women in treatment, might be sometimes difficult to get to the supermarket if they're really tired. So really have revisit the frozen veggies section. It's not just all frozen corn and peas anymore. There's actually quite a big diverse range of great veggie mixes that you can buy frozen, and they're great to throw into things as well. So
Yeah. And no,
yeah.
and just as you were talking, I'm thinking too that often family and friends want to support you when you're going through a period of time like this. So if you could say to them, make me some vegetable soup, that's something that is quite easy to make. You know, soup doesn't have to look a particular
Mm.
way. And I've never thought about that before. From people will bring you flowers or something, or they'll ask, what can I do for you?
Well,
Um,
I always say that to them, Sally. I always say, people want to help you and they're really happy to cook, but it's a good idea to recommend a recipe or give them. People actually quite like getting a new recipe
yes.
themselves to try that someone's given them.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you might just get, a lot of lasagnas and a lot of banana
that's
bread,
right.
which is
Yeah.
nothing wrong with those meals,
No.
provided they've grated all those veggies into the lasagna. But it is actually, I think people actually really appreciate to know what you're feeling like or you're preferring at this time, especially if you've got taste changes and other issues
Yeah.
going on. It's helpful to
Yeah.
give people some suggestions, and
Yes.
they'll
Because
learn something new recipe as well.
yeah, because when you look at the facts around in 7 women by the age of was it 80 or 85 would have a
Yeah,
diagnosis of breast cancer, I'd be very surprised if women and men tuning in today that they don't know someone who has breast cancer or
yeah,
has had it in the
absolutely.
past. And
Gone through it.
just we don't always understand all of those side effects of treatment and how difficult it
Mm,
is for people to eat when they know nutrition is really important for their recovery. So I think it's
mm.
really great what we've been able to share today. Jane, is there anything else that you would like to share to help people with breast cancer?
Yeah, I mean, think we sort of touched on the key things, Sally, but I just think it is sort of using it in a positive way as an opportunity to help lift, nourish, support. As we've mentioned, it can help with reducing your fatigue, feeling better, better cognition. So I think it's just sort of framing nutrition as something that can help improve my quality of life, but it doesn't have to be extreme or difficult
Mm.
or add more stress to what you're already doing. It's just small changes, adding a little bit more fruit to your oats. We've talked about adding more veggies in, just a few small changes you can start with. It takes a little time for your taste buds to change, preferences to change. If you've not been used to eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. So just start small, build up, and you'll be surprised. I mean, I had another lovely lady who I worked with for a couple of years. And when she first came in, she swore at me and she said she didn't cook and she really hated vegetables and whatnot. And over many, many months, she was motivated because we've also got some research. She wanted to sort of get in shape, lower her body fat to help reduce her risk of lymphedema. So she was tracking her with her physio L-Dex score. So over time, she still didn't end up cooking that much. She just became a real expert in going to cafes where she could get a salad and a
Yeah,
little bit of
yeah,
protein and salmon or whatever. And
yeah.
anyway, over the many months, she'd come back and I used to sort of slightly sort of smile because the first sort of 10 minutes of the consult catch up, she'd be showing me all these amazing photos of food that she'd managed to put together. But again, I'd said to her on that first time, this is what we're going to do. This is what your diet needs to look like. She would have run for the hills, but just again, slow and steady with behavior change, as you well know, sort of being an expert in this space is usually the sort of the approach that works best.
Yeah, no, Jane, thanks for sharing that. There was actually another question or sort of more observation that I'd like your input on. The thing that I hear from some of my clients, and again, I see it on social media as well, and it's something that concerns me, all of these different supplements or extreme diets that are promoted
Mm.
for people with cancer. Could you just shed some light on I suppose we can't talk about all the fads out there that are promoted, but just some of the
Mm.
concerns that in terms of what you're taking and how it could interact with your treatment
Mm.
and possibly
Yeah, yeah.
actually slow down recovery.
Well, I guess I didn't sort of touch on it, but we are guided by a lot of the research that the World Cancer Research Fund that I did a little bit of work with when I was in the UK for they're a big international body. They've got like things like 30 scientists around the world who really sift through all the literature. And every 10 years they put out a landmark report on cancer and sort of the recommendations for prevention, not only for preventing your first cancer, but for people who have been treated with a cancer, so cancer survivors. And one of their key recommendations, and they've gone through and looked at lots of different trials on different supplements, is that not to use supplements for cancer prevention or treatment. And that's simply because we just don't know enough about the effects. And certainly there have been cases where they haven't done a lot of the research properly up front, and they've recommended, for example, there's a very well-known study in using beta-carotene in lung cancer patients. There's some in prostate cancers using selenium and vitamin E, where they've actually had increased rates of mortality and deaths for people that have been taking these supplements during treatment. And also people, when they're having chemo, what we're really trying to do is sort of kill off cancer cells. So the last thing you're needing during that time is to be taking all these supplements and antioxidants that are creating this kind of antioxidant kind of reduced as improved space, because that's going to actually help your cancer grow, because it's kind of in a way protecting it. Yeah, so I guess just going back to supplements, I guess we just know that you just get much more of a synergistic, holistic benefit if you eat real food in the first instance. Of course, there are some exceptions. We do want to sort of make sure you're having enough vitamin D, but even if you have mushrooms and there are other ways to get your vitamin D, but you do want to check your vitamin D levels. And sometimes there can be some clinical concerns because of if you are having really some difficulties eating because you're really unwell. But I think just going to sort of Chemist Warehouse, and I actually did have one lady who once bought in 126 bottles of supplements that she'd sort of been sold, and it's a real heart-sink moment for me because, again, we just don't know the interactions effects. Pharmacists are really good people to talk to as well about if you want to be taking supplements. Yeah, we just know that food does a better job of feeding us the nutrition we need, and we get a lot more benefit out of whole foods than taking another bottle.
I think, Jane, you answered it really well, because just the bottom line, leading cancer research organisation says don't take supplements. I don't think we need any more sort of guidelines than that. And also coming back to our nutrition, digestion, metabolism principles, we know the body is designed to extract the nutrients from whole foods. So we should encourage that as much as possible, and then just replace for any deficiencies that have occurred through lack of appetite and illness. So, Jane, thanks again for sharing with us today. Where can our listeners find out more about the work that you offer and the support that you offer?
Yeah, I mean, one of the sort of positives from, I suppose, came out of COVID is that we can all do a lot more telehealth consults anywhere in the country, which is great because we can reach people who are in more remote areas who don't necessarily have access to specialists who do work in cancer. So yeah, you're welcome to come to my website, which I am planning on updating very shortly, but at the moment it's Can Nutrition, canutrition.com.au. So very welcome to email me if you have any questions or would like a little bit more help having a look at your diet and what you're doing, and then just getting some sort of very individual guidance on any tweaks we can make just to help you at this time and support your needs.
Yeah. Jane, thanks again. And I'll make sure the links to your website are provided with this episode's notes. So if you've been listening today and you've enjoyed this episode, please let me know and share the link on your social media. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Next week, I'm going to be doing a very practical episode on mindful eating while we're traveling overseas. Take care, and I look forward to sharing with you again next week. You have been listening to the Eating For You podcast with Sally Ann Pisk. If a long-term way of healthier eating is of interest to you, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast.